It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Ghost Boys podcast. Landon, what is going on?
Not a ton. It's Thursday. The week's almost done. And as we start to approach the draft, we basically have our ears to the ground and are listening. And while our ears are on the ground, we are also listening to the wind and the whispers in the wind and all the other metaphors for people secretly telling us stuff about what may or may not be happening to the Cowboys, all while during lying season. So it's a fun process of kind of parsing out what sounds ridiculous, what sounds too ridiculous to be true, and what sounds too ridiculous to be false, which is a fun category as well.
Yeah, so today's show is going to be based off draft rumors that we're hearing about the Dallas Cowboys, Landon. And we're going to start with a really interesting one from Tony Pauline from the Pro Football Network, who's actually been pretty plugged in for the Cowboys over the last couple of years. He had a report last night. This came out really, really late on the East Coast time, so you might not have seen it, but he suggests that Milton Williams, the defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech, who we've actually talked a little bit about in the last couple of shows, Landon, is the perfect target for the Cowboys at 44. He even mentioned that, hey, if they want to trade back from number 10 into the late teens, he could be even a target that early in the draft. But 44 is the ideal landing spot if he is there. First and foremost, do you buy this report?
I think I buy that they are very interested in Milton Williams. Man, first round is rich.
10's not happening. It's not happening.
No,
but if it's frankly late teens, 20s, still very rich, but more palatable. Very rich. More palatable.
I would agree. Like, I think, second round, I mean, I could be convinced. If it's first round, man, I need to hear a lot of explanation on how much you guys like him, because his downsides are he played against a slightly lower level of competition. He's slightly tweener-ish, but I don't think that that's necessarily a downside for the Cowboys, especially what they want to do with a guy like this. I mean, I think that he kind of fits a perfect body type that they desire, right? So I don't think that that's a knock on him necessarily for them. If they really rate him like this, I mean, clearly he has the athletic profile to fit that kind of pick, right? I mean, he is an absolute stud athlete at the position. Whether you want to measure him as a defensive end or a defensive tackle, he's an incredible athlete. So, his production against lower levels was pretty decent. I mean, you probably could tell better than I am. But
this one's very interesting because it depends on what you care about. So. If you look at like tackle for a loss per game, which I really care about, very average. Okay. And that's not necessarily what you want to see. But if you look at like Pro Football Focus's pass rush win rate, elite, right? If you look at Jim Corbin, I'm not sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with Jim Corbin, but he does a lot of like market share for tackles and tackles for a loss and tackles within the first 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. And he actually ranks as a Hall of Fame worthy prospect, like a better than Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald in that type of production. So it's all over the board here, Landon. And I guess that's why I can't get a firm grasp of what type of player is he.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, like, it's funny because I think somebody tweeted me about this last night, and they actually, now I remember they did, and I gave a very similar answer here, is that we really need to start readjusting our calibration on how we think prospects are going to get drafted this year, because this year, more than any other year, we're just going to be wrong. These players are, and by wrong, I mean
where they're going to go.
Understanding how the rest of the teams view these guys, right? The actual market for these guys. There's just so much unknown information. There's so much unknown information. There's a lack of information at the team level, which is also, filtering down to our level, because ultimately people on our level and the media, they get their information from a lot of teams indirectly. So when they don't have a lot of information, we don't have a lot of information. And again, because there's not the kind of cross-pollination that happens at the combine and at the Senior Bowl, where the scouts talk to each other and they kind of get a consensus on what other teams are feeling about player X and player Y. I just think that there's going to be wide bandwidth of outcomes that could happen for a lot of these players. Their draft stocks will be all over the place based on teams, just because there isn't the kind of consensus building activities that normally happen in a draft season. So and this is all a way to say that Milton Williams at 44 is absolutely way higher than I thought he would go. But at the same time, he has aspects to his game that I it's not like he couldn't play or turn out and produce like a guy that is deserving of 44. It's just that we have less information on these guys this year. And he's a smaller school player. I think, for guys like Milton Williams, the teams are probably holding players like this close to their chest, right? Because they don't want to let everyone know how much they like them. I'm sure they didn't even want his name to get out in the first place, Nope. But I think that guys like this, their draft stocks are going to be all over the place. So I wouldn't be surprised or shocked when these guys get taken higher or lower than we expect. And I think it's really important to hear the teams that draft these guys and have them explain exactly what it was that they liked about these guys, and so we can get a better understanding why they got drafted where they did.
Yeah, I think after Milton Williams' pro day, I think his name being under the radar just wasn't going to happen. And in case you aren't familiar, I'm going to read through his pro day numbers. And again, you can adjust these if you want to, add the 0.06 seconds, even have 0.01 seconds here or 0.1 second here, and you'll be fine. So 6'3", 284. A lot of teams, I think, are concerned about the arm length, 31.5-inch arms. Those are small. But a 4.67 40-yard dash, 1.65 10-yard split. He did 34 on the bench, 38.5-inch vertical, a 10-1 broad jump, and then the shuttles are just unbelievable. 4.33 20-yard shuttle, 6.96. You're talking about like a 99 percentile athlete here. And what's frustrating, Landon, is when you throw on the tape, you really don't see it because of the way Louisiana Tech plays, right? A lot of times he's either lining up as a nose tackle or as a 5 technique, and whenever he's on the field, he's being doubled, and you don't get to see him be an up the field pass rusher like he'll probably be in the NFL. So it's a projection, but man, if you're going to gamble on somebody with these kind of traits, I get it. If they pick him at 44, I won't know how to feel, to be honest. I think this is one of the bigger wild cards in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's all about exactly what they have in mind for him, because you look at his 2019 tape, he spent a lot more time outside at defensive end, and then in 2019, in 2020, that you saw him, like you said, play a little bit of nose, a lot of B gap stuff. But mostly, again, as a 5 technique. I mean, that's where the vast majority of his snaps have come at college, and that's not where we're going to be playing him. Like, he's not going to be some kind of 2-gapper, like who's or a 1-gapper in the 5 technique on the regular basis. I can't imagine. I imagine that, especially at pass rush downs, he'll be kicked inside and be a 3 technique. And honestly, I would feel most comfortable with him at 44 if you were to tell me, hey, we're putting 5 to 7 pounds on this guy, and he's going to be a full-time 3 technique. Because I think, especially with the length issues, you can mitigate a lot of that inside. I think that explosion when you're lined up real on the outside shoulder of a guard can really help mitigate getting those hands on you. And I think that's where he's going to be the most disruptive, and I think you're going to get the most kind of production you need in this defense is as a really terrorizing, explosive interior pass rusher. I think that's a spot where he could earn that kind of 44th overall pick marker.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, and hopefully it makes sense, but I feel like the only way the Cowboys pick Milton Williams at 44 is if they get like Patrick Surtain at 10, right? If they get the rock solid corner that fills a need and is a day one starter, maybe they're a little bit more willing to take an upside pick at 44. But if they go, let's say they take Zaven Collins and they shock us there, I think I would be very surprised then if you go and take Milton Williams, because now you're taking two small school guys and maybe neither one of them are day one starters. I think that would be surprising. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of different kind of pairings that need to be considered when you're talking about the first two picks. You don't necessarily want to take two guys that are upside plays and that aren't necessarily going to be able to come in. You need at least one of those guys to be able to come in and start and give you solid snaps right away, whether it's the first or second round pick. If you're taking a swing on an upside guy at either one of those picks, you just need to make sure that the other one can come in and give you solid snaps right away, because otherwise you're going to be running out a lot of the similar defense that you had last year, which is not
wasn't great.
Exciting. No, it's not great, Bob.
Let's take a quick break so I can tell you guys about Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Football might be over, but NBA, MLB, and NHL are in full swing. BetOnline even covers awards, TV shows, and reality TV with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything that you can imagine. BetOnline has you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just make sure you're using that promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Landon, let's talk about another draft little rumor / tidbit. And this one from our friend Mike Fisher at Cowboys SI. He said that the Cowboys have, for the most part, cleared Caleb Farley, and he is somebody that they would consider drafting. Now, it doesn't sound like they gave him a perfect medical report, but certainly good enough where they feel comfortable drafting him and being able to have him on the field sooner rather than later. First and foremost, I'm going to assume that you're buying this report, correct?
Yes. I think so. It's because it's not like, earth shattering. I think, it's acknowledging that there's an injury.
Yes.
But it's not, it's just basically telling us, hey, they haven't taken Caleb Farley off the board by any stretch of the imagination.
And we've seen them take other players off their board because of injuries, and we've seen them not. Jalen Smith is a perfect example of somebody that they left on their board even with all of his injury concerns. But my question to you, and this one's more important, where do you start to feel comfortable taking Caleb Farley? Because I don't think it's at 10. There's too many risks there. But where are you okay with the risk of Caleb Farley?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, just to be clear, that without the injury, the Cowboys think very highly of Caleb Farley. Yes. He would have been a consideration at 10. I think they did. So the back injury did have an effect. Let's be clear. Like they clearly don't feel comfortable taking him at 10 because of the back injury. But it's not so much that it completely took them off the board. So I would say that you probably are still you are obviously still targeting him in the first round. So it's a scenario that we've talked about before. We did it in mock drafts. We've talked about all the options. It's the trade up from 44 to the mid 20s, right? It's to trade up to get up in front of, so one of these teams that may be looking for
Baltimore.
Yeah. Baltimore is, I mean, just try to get in front of these guys. I remember what the other thing that Fish said. We could talk about that as well. I think that's where they would be targeting a Caleb Farley. Another guy, just to kind of also throw this in, that Fish mentioned in that same report on his YouTube channel. If you guys don't check it out, make sure you check out his YouTube channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.
Nice
the Locked On Cowboys Fox. But he also mentioned that the Cowboys are fans of Trayvon Moehrig, and that they consider him to potentially be a guy that they would also maybe target with a small trade up into the first round to try to secure that fifth.
So that's three names. Let's just kind of recap it, right? It's three guys that we've heard that the Cowboys like quite a bit that they would consider moving up for. Zaven Collins, we know for a fact they have a first-round grade on. It sounds like Caleb Farley is somebody that the Cowboys have at least a borderline first-round grade on. But actually, even let's take a step back. We know how the Cowboys do their draft board. My guess is that Caleb Farley is going to have a first-round grade on their board, and they're going to rank him like he has no injury designation, and then
they'll have like a designation or a tag on him, right? That'll say
he might even be a top 10 player on their board. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to pick him in the top 10, which that's a different story for the other, another time. And then Trayvon Moehrig, a safety. So 3 guys, all that I think probably are in the 20s that the Cowboys could trade up and get.
I'm pretty sure the way the Cowboys do it too is that they have like a flag system or some sort of like kind of medical tag that like is ranked by severity, so obviously the most severe guys, they'll just literally take the name off the board and he won't be available. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what that designation means for where they kind of place them on the board, or if it's just they put him up there at 10, he has the designation so they know not to take him in that area. I think the most fascinating thing out of all of this is clearly the Cowboys are making plans or have maybe even a trade implicit, kind of in place already to trade up from 44. They know that they have the assets to kind of move around to control their destiny a little bit. Obviously, a trade up from 10 to something like 4 for someone like Kyle Pitts is extremely rich, more rich than they probably want to pay. But a trade up from 44, especially with the extra comp picks that you have this year, like we talked about, not only does that sound reasonable, it sounds like something that they clearly have likely. Like they have planned on it and almost kind of written in pencil and maybe, like I said, have deals in place with teams. So you look at what it's just because they're talking so much about Zaven Collins, Trayvon Moehrig, Caleb Farley, and all 3 of these situations have been mentioned in conjunction with the trade up. So that's a lot of smoke for a trade up that has been discussed for a long time. So I'm starting to think more and more that, that is probably going to happen. And it's going to be about who's going to be on the board when they trade up to get them.
I guess I would be shocked at this point if they make a pick at 44. I think I just would be.
I think it's just so much smoke about it. It's hard to ignore at this point.
Well, and again, they have an extra 3rd round pick. They have an extra 4th round pick, and they're expected to get another 4th round pick next year as a comp pick. So they're going to have lots of picks between these next 2 years that they can move around and go get their guys. What's fascinating to me, Landon, is those 3 guys that we mentioned, Farley, Moehrig, and Collins, who they trade up for might not be dependent on who falls, but more importantly, what they do at 10, right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Maybe they feel great about Rashawn Slater, right? They think Rashawn Slater is an all-pro player at tackle or guard, and they feel pretty good that, hey, Farley's going to be there in the 20s. We can go get him. There's other corners. Maybe Greg Newsome is a guy that they absolutely love, or maybe JC Horn falls, right?
Melifonwu,
right?
That.
So then there's the other scenario. Hey, if we take Surtain at 10 and Moehrig is available, and we think that'd be a great combination to start our, rebuild our secondary. That makes a lot of sense as well. So I believe all these because I think these are all guys that fit their scheme. I do think it's interesting, Moehrig, though, because I don't know if he's the perfect free safety for Dan Quinn's scheme, but he might just be the best safety in the class, and he's the most reliable of all the safeties we talk about. And maybe that's just what they want now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Moehrig has, good ball attacking skills. I mean, I think the problem is that Moehrig isn't. The TCU defense is not a 1-for-1 translation to what we're going to do next year. They do a lot of middle of the field open stuff, a lot of quarters, match defense. So it's a lot of split field safety looks. So I think Moehrig has the skill set to play that kind of single safety high. But you're right. Like it isn't like it's not an easy translation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because there isn't exactly a ton of tape of him playing in cover 1 and cover 3. It's up high and running around in the back end.
All right, let's take one more quick break. Then we'll get back to some more Cowboys related news. I wanted to tell you guys about rockauto.com. It's a family business that has been serving auto parts to customers online for 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, Get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The rockauto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brand, specifications, and prices that you prefer. Best of all, prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low, and they're the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Landon, just a couple of Cowboys-related notes that we need to touch on before we end the show. First and foremost, Aldon Smith, the team signed last year, did sign a one-year deal with the Seattle Seahawks. The Cowboys won't be receiving a compensatory pick here, as I believe the deal is just about the veteran minimum. We heard trade talks last year about the Cowboys maybe moving him for a late day 3 pick. Did the Cowboys make a mistake by, 1, not trading him then, and 2, not retaining him?
No, I mean, I think, a lot of this situation is it's Monday morning quarterbacking. I think we don't really know exactly what would have how it would have played out. We didn't really know exactly what the situation was going to be for Aldon Smith by the end of the season. We didn't know the defense was going to change at the end of the season. Look, I've heard rumors, I'm sure you heard whispers too, that there was some dissatisfaction with the way he was playing and the way he was fitting in the locker room in probably around Thanksgiving. I mean, really, yep. once his play started significantly dropping off, things started to kind of go sour. And I think, there was also probably some friction with the fact that they brought back in Randy Gregory. And then there was some conversations about whether the coaches wanted to play Randy Gregory over Aldon Smith. And obviously Jerry kind of put his foot down, and I'm glad he did, because Randy Gregory obviously played a lot better than any other defensive end not named DeMarcus Lawrence at the back half of the season. And I think you go into the season feeling pretty good about the at least starters on the outside because of the snaps that Randy Gregory got last year. So I think the Cowboys actually played this right. I think there's still some off-field, personal stuff that Alden's dealing with, and obviously Seattle was comfortable with kind of dealing with that, and Alden's kind of is dealing with this in an ongoing way. Yeah. So it's not going to always be binary. There's going to be slip-ups. There's going to be setbacks. And if Seattle can handle all that, then they got a great player. They got a great choice. I'm rooting for them. I think this works out for both teams. I mean, the Cowboys didn't necessarily need the hype, another veteran at the spot. I think you've got Gregory, you've got Lawrence. You plug in some of these young guys, see what they have, maybe draft another guy. You didn't need someone who was a malcontent, at least in the Cowboys locker room, to kind of be in the mix, especially if he wasn't going to be getting a ton of snaps. So,
I agree.
It's unfortunate the Cowboys won't get a comp pick for him. But at the same time, I wish him luck, and I hope he does well in Seattle every time he doesn't play the Cowboys.
It's not like they were going to get a lot back via trade anyways. It was going to be a conditional 6th or 7th round pick. And at that point, I don't even know if the Cowboys care about 6th or 7th round picks, because they would rather just sign undrafted free agents that make the roster because it's cheaper. So it's not that big of a deal. One interesting stat, literally as you were talking, Landon, our favorite Twitter account at NFL_StatSpot tweeted, Aldon Smith allowed 0 punts in the end zone in 2012.
It's such a great account. If you guys don't follow, it just tweets the most unuseful, random stats about whatever person is being talked about, and it's hilarious. Yeah, so
it's the absolute best. One last Cowboys news item. Gerald McCoy, who the Cowboys signed last year, he made it through a couple practices before he was eventually injured, and the Cowboys released him. He was talking to Rick Stroud on Twitter, or I believe it was maybe through the Pewter Report, about wanting to come back and play in 2021, and that he has a couple teams monitoring him. He's not going to sign before the draft. I think teams are going to wait to see how he is in May and June. Would you be interested in bringing him back, depending on how the draft goes?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, just to maybe see what's going on. I certainly wouldn't guarantee him a ton of money at this point, because he's an older player and he's coming off an injury, as we all know. But yeah, I mean, I think there is going to be a class of these guys, and I think there is probably a dozen players at this point who are veterans that are names that we all know that are unsigned, that are just, it's okay. We've reached the point in free agency where nothing's good is going to happen to me before the draft. I'm not going to get a good deal before the draft. Let's wait until the other side of things, see who misses out on positions that they need. And then hopefully they reach out to me. I think Gerald McCoy is one of those guys. Richard Sherman is one of those guys that the Cowboys probably have on their Rolodex ready to call. Yeah. I mean, Alex Smith ready to call if they get through the draft and they don't pick players at those positions.
I would agree. And I think Sean Lee might be another one, right?
Yep,
Depending on what the Cowboys do at linebacker in the first 2 days of the draft. A lot of
they'll draft the linebacker coach in the draft. They'll go out and reach out Sean Lee.
Oh, I'm such a hater. I think you're right. There is a dozen of these guys out there that I think are just waiting for the draft to play out and see how the chips fall. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys bring in one or two big name vets. I'm not saying significant players. I'm just saying guys that everybody knows. Yes, big names at some point this offseason. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Please, we're pushing our YouTube channel. Videos up there every single day. Make sure you guys are doing that. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCoolBCB, and I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you next time.